In 2016, a massive meta-analysis examining thousands of participants revealed something that puzzled researchers. Uncertainty, not actual danger, was more strongly linked to anxiety, depression, obsessive-compulsive symptoms, panic attacks, and eating disorders than almost any other psychological variable they could measure. The strongest connection of all was with generalized anxiety, the kind of worry that latches onto everything and refuses to let go. A low-poly brain floats in a dark geometric void, its angular surfaces pulsing with faint light. Inside its polygonal caverns, tiny crystalline signals flicker between jagged neural pathways. One region near the center glows brighter than the rest, a small, almond-shaped cluster of triangular faces, the amygdala. Neuroscience research has consistently shown that this structure does something counterintuitive. When the brain encounters a clear, definite threat, the amygdala activates in a predictable, measured way. But when it encounters something ambiguous, something that might be dangerous or might be nothing at all, the amygdala fires even harder. Your brain literally fears the word maybe more than the word yes. Picture a low-poly savanna stretching to a flat horizon, all angular grass blades and blocky acacia trees under a geometric sun. A simplified human figure stands frozen between two paths. Down one path, a sharp-edged predator is clearly visible, polygonal teeth bared. Down the other, a thick wall of fog made from overlapping translucent planes obscures everything. The figure stares at the fog. Every ancestor who casually strolled into the unknown without preparing for the worst became something else's dinner. Evolution did not reward relaxation in the face of ambiguity. It rewarded those who treated every rustling bush as a lion, every shadow as a snake, every silence as the moment before an attack. Now pull that ancient wiring forward 100,000 years. A modern, low-poly office building rises from a flat gray plain, its windows glowing with cool blue light. Inside a cubicle made of clean geometric panels, a figure sits at a minimalist desk, staring at a polygonal laptop screen. The screen shows an unopened email from a supervisor with the subject line reading simply, "We need to talk." That is all it says. 4 words. And those 4 words will generate more cortisol, more racing thoughts, more jaw-clenching than an email that says, "You are fired, effective immediately." Because the fired email, as devastating as it is, provides certainty. The brain can begin processing it. The vague email provides nothing but an open loop, and open loops are what the threat detection system hates most. Researchers defined this reaction formally back in 1998. They called it intolerance of uncertainty, a dispositional characteristic where a person reacts negatively to uncertain situations at every level: emotional, cognitive, and behavioral. People high in this trait find uncertainty threatening regardless of the actual probability of a bad outcome. It does not matter that the email probably says something routine. The maybe is enough. A low-poly waiting room materializes around us, all hard-edged plastic chairs and a flickering fluorescent light built from flat geometric planes. 7 angular figures sit in the chairs. Some clutch their polygonal hands together. One bounces a triangular knee. A door at the far end of the room stays shut. They are all waiting for the same medical test result. But their internal experiences are radically different. In that original 1998 research, intolerance of uncertainty was the single most powerful factor that distinguished people with generalized anxiety disorder from the non-clinical control group. Not trauma history, not personality type, not how bad their actual life circumstances were. It was how they responded to not knowing. If you have ever felt your stomach drop at an ambiguous text message, or spent an entire weekend dreading a Monday meeting that turned out to be routine, that is not a flaw in your character. That is an ancient detection system doing exactly what it was built to do, just in a world that no longer matches its original blueprint. A cross-section of the polygonal brain opens before us like a geode splitting apart, revealing layered crystalline cavities inside. The amygdala pulses at the center, sending angular shards of light outward through branching geometric tunnels. Each tunnel leads to a different region. One reaches toward the prefrontal cortex, a smooth, faceted dome at the front. Another snakes down toward the gut, a coiled, low-poly intestine below. When the amygdala detects ambiguity, it triggers a cascade. The prefrontal cortex begins generating scenarios, dozens of them, trying to simulate every possible outcome so it can prepare a plan. This is what rumination actually is. Not a personality defect, but a search algorithm running through an unsolvable problem, generating prediction after prediction, discarding none of them because none of them can be confirmed or denied. Meanwhile, the signal traveling downward reaches the body. Heart rate increases. Muscles tighten across the polygonal shoulders and jaw. The digestive system slows because the body has decided this is not a safe time to process food. All of this from a single unanswered question. A low-poly phone sits on a bedside table in a dark geometric bedroom. Its screen lights up with a notification, a single message preview that cuts off mid-sentence. The angular figure in the bed rolls over, picks it up, reads the partial message, and then lies back staring at a ceiling made of flat, dark planes. The partial message is worse than no message at all. It is worse than bad news. Because bad news activates a different circuit, the one that processes grief and loss, and begins the slow work of acceptance. Ambiguity activates the scanning circuit, the one that keeps searching, keeps generating, keeps refusing to let the body rest, because rest means letting your guard down, and letting your guard down in the ancestral environment meant death. Researchers in 2016 further dissected intolerance of uncertainty into two distinct types. The first is prospective intolerance, the need to know what will happen next. This is the future-oriented kind, the one that drives people to check weather forecasts 7 times before a trip, to demand that doctors give exact percentages, to feel physically uncomfortable when a plan has any looseness in it. It whispers, "I must know what will happen." The second type is inhibitory intolerance, and this one is quieter but arguably more destructive. This is the kind that blocks action entirely. It says, "I cannot move forward without certainty." A polygonal figure stands at the entrance to a geometric maze, its translucent walls shifting and rearranging. The figure does not enter. It does not turn around. It simply stops. Because every possible path contains unknown variables, and the system has decided that no movement is safer than wrong movement. Think about how many decisions in your life do not get made. Not because you lack information, but because you lack certainty. The job application never submitted. The conversation never started. The medical appointment never scheduled. Inhibitory intolerance does not look like anxiety from the outside. It looks like procrastination. It looks like laziness. It looks like someone who just does not care enough. But inside, the system is locked in a loop, scanning for a guarantee that will never arrive. A vast polygonal landscape stretches out, half the ground covered in transparent geometric fog. Scattered across the clear half, low-poly figures move freely between angular buildings and simple, blocky trees. On the foggy half, other figures stand motionless, some mid-step, frozen in the thick, translucent planes that surround them. Here is what makes this especially important to understand. Intolerance of uncertainty is not a switch that is either on or off. It exists on a spectrum. Everyone has some degree of discomfort with the unknown. That is normal, healthy, and evolutionarily useful. The question is not whether you experience it, but where you fall on the continuum, and how much it interferes with the life you actually want to live. The world gave us an unprecedented natural experiment in this. During the pandemic, people experienced largely identical objective circumstances, the same lockdowns, the same news cycles, the same disrupted routines. But the psychological impact was dramatically uneven. Those who already sat higher on the intolerance of uncertainty spectrum suffered significantly more psychological distress than those who sat lower, even when their actual risk levels, financial situations, and social support were comparable. The uncertainty itself was the variable doing the damage. A low-poly hospital corridor stretches forward, all sharp angles and flat fluorescent panels. On one side, geometric posters display simplified virus diagrams. Angular figures in blocky masks walk in both directions. Some move steadily. Others press themselves against the walls, clutching polygonal phones, scrolling through blocky news feeds, searching for one more data point that might make the unknown feel manageable. That scrolling behavior is worth examining. It looks like information seeking, and on the surface it is. But for someone high in intolerance of uncertainty, no amount of information is ever sufficient. Each new data point generates 3 new questions. Each answered question reveals 4 more unanswered ones. The searching behavior is not a solution to the distress. It is a symptom of it, a behavioral expression of the same scanning algorithm running in the prefrontal cortex, and it is burning through cognitive resources that the person desperately needs for actual coping. A geometric control room appears, angular screens covering every wall, each displaying different data streams built from simple colored blocks. A lone polygonal figure sits at the center console, eyes darting between screens. New screens keep materializing, crowding in, overlapping, their data contradicting each other. The figure's hands hover over the controls, unable to choose which screen to trust. This is the architecture of modern anxiety for a significant number of people. Not a response to danger, a response to the absence of resolution. And recognizing that distinction matters enormously, because the solutions are completely different. You do not treat a threat response by removing the threat when the threat is not any specific thing, but the space between things, the gap, the unknown. So what does work? A polygonal laboratory with clean geometric surfaces comes into view. Simple block-shaped researchers arrange crystalline data points on a flat illuminated table. Charts made from angular bars rise upward, their heights clearly differentiated. A meta-analysis of 26 studies published in 2023 found that cognitive behavioral therapy, specifically targeting intolerance of uncertainty, produced significant improvements compared to control groups. The effect size was large, a standardized mean difference of 0.88, which in clinical research is substantial. These were not people who simply felt a bit better. They showed meaningful, measurable reductions in how much uncertainty controlled their daily functioning. The therapy does not eliminate uncertainty, nothing can. Instead, it retrains the evaluation system. A polygonal classroom appears, with simple angular chairs arranged in a circle. A geometric figure at the front holds a translucent cube that shifts between different colors. The other figures watch as the cube changes, and slowly, deliberately, they practice not reacting to each shift. The core mechanism is exposure, but not to fears, to ambiguity itself. Gradually, systematically, the person practices sitting with not knowing, leaving a question unanswered for an hour, making a decision with only 80% of the desired information, sending a message and putting the phone in another room. Each repetition teaches the threat detection system that ambiguity by itself is survivable. A low-poly park unfolds under a geometric sky that is half clear angular blue and half dense polygonal fog. A figure sits on a simple blocky bench right at the boundary line, 1 foot in clarity, 1 foot in fog. For the first time, the figure is not frozen. It is sitting by choice. There is a profound difference between being unable to tolerate uncertainty and choosing to sit with it deliberately. The first is a cage. The second is a practice. And the research shows that the shift between them is not only possible, but well documented, replicable, and accessible. Your brain treats uncertainty as a threat because for 100,000 years, that was the correct response. The rustle in the grass was worth panicking over. The stranger approaching the camp was worth preparing for. The unfamiliar berry was worth avoiding. The cost of a false alarm was low. The cost of missing a real threat was death. So the system was calibrated to err on the side of alarm every single time. A geometric timeline stretches across a dark void, a long, angular beam with notches marking eras. At one end, polygonal caves and simple fire pits. At the other, angular skyscrapers and glowing screens. The beam is almost entirely weighted toward the cave end. The modern section is a sliver so thin it nearly disappears. We have lived in the modern world for an evolutionary eye blink. The wiring has not caught up. It may never catch up. But understanding that the alarm is a mismatch, not a message, changes everything about how you can respond to it. A final geometric space opens. It is simple. A low-poly room with a single angular window. Outside the window, the landscape is made entirely of shifting translucent fog. Formless, unpredictable, constantly rearranging. A polygonal figure stands at the window, watching. The fog does not clear. The figure does not look away. But something in the figure's posture is different now. The shoulders are lower. The hands are open. The amygdala is still sending its signal. It always will. But the prefrontal cortex has learned to receive that signal and add a second line of annotation. This is uncertainty. This is not danger. They are not the same thing. And for the first time, the figure turns from the window and walks back into the room, where a simple low-poly chair and table hold a warm, angular cup. The fog stays outside. Life continues inside. Not because the unknown has been resolved, but because the person in the room has finally stopped requiring resolution before allowing themselves to live. That is not a small thing. That is one of the most important skills a human brain can learn in a world that will never, not once, offer the certainty it craves.